everybody, welcome back to Shawn's Garage. Got a big project we're working on right now on the Malibu. If you watched the previous videos, you've seen that I replaced the frame notch, or I installed a frame notch and replaced the rear frame section. If you haven't seen those, go ahead and go back to it. But today we're working on fender flares, so let's get it on it. All right, here we go. Doing fender flares, fabricated actual metal fender flares on the Malibu today. There's a couple video, or at least one video that I seen out there, somebody putting the G&X plastic flares on a Malibu. They look pretty good. I mean, they looked all right. This is more of a drag car that I seen. That was more of a street, maybe a road race type car where he did all four. I'm just going to be doing the rear flare, and I'm doing it out of metal. And so I've already done the passenger side. Well, I've gotten pretty almost done with it. I'm going to finish that up today. But it was a learning process. Never done it before. And but I think it's turning out pretty decent for never doing any real body metal work. I'll flip it over and show. All right, here we go. I've got it all welded in. Still got a lot of grinding to do, but this is the finished product on the passenger side. Now that I know how to do it, I'm going to show you guys how on the driver's side. But basically what I did was I cut the fender here, cut it here, and across the bottom, cut along this body line here. Same down here, cut the body line. Then I cut up right here, you know, here, oops. Here I left about that much where I didn't cut. Same right here, left about that much that I didn't cut. And then I cut the inside of, I don't know if you can see it, inside I cut the wheel tub, and then that allowed me to bring this whole section out 1 inch. I moved it out 1 inch, and then filled it in. You know, got the plane, held the same similar plane as the original. And it's a little wavy. I got a couple spots, but I got something planned to fix that. This here was old repair somebody else had done. Not the greatest job that they did. So I'm going to try to work this out a little bit. If you can see, you know, I don't know if you can really tell, but this lip right here isn't exactly right, and it's dished in there. There's probably well over an 1/8 inch of body filler in that spot to fix it. But yeah, not bad. I'll show you on this side what we're gonna do. You can see why I got to do it. I'll show you a video of the tire on the other side and show you how much it covers. But the rim I'm putting on is a 10-inch wide with a 4-inch back spacing. Now, if you've seen in the other videos, I did a frame notch so I could sink the tires back, but they didn't. If you go with a 4 3/4 inch back spacing, you have to do the frame notch. With a 4-inch back spacing, which is what I have, you do not have to do a frame notch, and it will clear. That's the stock back spacing, is 4-inch. I could not get these rims in a 4 3/4 inch back spacing. That is why they stick out farther, and that is why I have to do the flare. I did the frame notch specifically. I did it anyways because I replaced both rear frame sections from here back. I replaced that frame section, and the frame notch allowed me to open up the frame and weld the inside where I did the frame notch, or where I did the frame extension, and then box it back in, and it'll be perfectly strong. Plus, if I go with different rims down in the future, maybe I could go a little wider, and that'll allow me to run a even wider tire than what I have. But like I said, if the rims you choose, and you can get a 10-inch rim with a 4 3/4 inch back spacing in the stock location without the flares if you do a frame notch. But I couldn't get these rims with a 4 3/4. So, and I really like these rims. I think they make the car, I think they make the car nice, really nice. Now on the fronts, I got to run a spacer. I ended up buying a 1 1/4 inch spacer to clear my caliper, because the tires hitting the caliper, or rim is hitting the caliper, because the inside of that wheel is machined flat, and the rotor flange doesn't stick out far enough. But it'll be all right. I got plenty of room under there for them to come out another 1 1/4 inch. So it'll look just fine. So here's the stock fender. I'll show you again here where I'm going to cut. I'm going to come over about 3 inches or so, and I'm going to make a cut just above the roll on this body line, and I'm going to bring this cut to here, and then I'm going to do a radius around in this area, and then I'm going to come up and cut along this body line, or the flare line, whatever you want to call it. Continue this radius dip back down to the body line, and just like on the front, cut just above the roll for this body line, and come here about 3 inches. I'm going to stop. Got a little bit of a repair I got to look at, see what's going on there, but again, and then I'll come down about 3 inches or so, 2 inches, and then I'm going to cut right here, and then I'm going to come under here and try to be about an 1/8 inch off this line and cut all the way to here. Then same thing, about 3 inches here, I'm going to come down, or about 2 inches where I stopped here, I'm going to cut the fender here and do the same thing, but stay about an 1/8 inch inside the bottom there. Then I'm going to be cutting the wheel tub out as straight as I can. I'll show you how I determine how far up into the wheelhouse I go, and then that will allow me to pull this flare and this fender out, weld it into place, and on the inside I'll do the wheel tub first and get that all welded in, and then I'll do my fillers just like I did on the other side, and hopefully it'll turn out pretty close to what I have here. I saved my templates and stuff, and I'm hoping to just transfer my templates from this side to the other side as close as possible. So that's the game plan. So let's see what we can get done. All right, here we go. Gonna use the Chicago electric stud gun, And when I bought it, I didn't realize it came with a stud gun, or with a slide hammer. So I ended up buying another slide hammer, but that's got other stuff I can use as well in the future. But anyways, it comes with a slide hammer. Comes with, I don't know, a different collet. I think that might be for the smaller or the bigger, whichever. Pens, and it came with an assortment of pens. So 2 different sizes. So this is what I'm going to be using to pull out these dents on this side. I said I had this little bit of a shoddy repair here. I'm going to try pulling it out a little bit with that, and then I'm going to use my welder and try to build up this body line here if I can a little bit. And then I got a little bit of a wave here, and then I'm going to use a straight edge. Here's a block of wood for now. I'll show you. Like there, it's a little dished in, a little bit dished in. Here it gets pretty good. It's pretty good until you get to about there, and then there's a little bit more of a gap. So I'm gonna see if I can pull this stuff out, try to straighten it out. Here you can see there's that repair that they did, and even if it was flat on there before, I mean, it's a big dish right there. So I'm gonna see if I can pull it out, pull this low area out a little bit, and then build it up with some weld. And then here, I mean, it's dished out a little bit, but it's, I don't know, I think it'll probably be good enough, because the way this body flares there, maybe I might try tapping it in a little bit with a hammer or something. But let's get it cleaned up, and then get these dents pulled, and get it ground down decent enough to, I got welds and stuff here. I got to grind this down flat and blend it. Same thing over here, grind this down and then blend it. You know, I may have to use a welder, fill in some low spots, but let's get it done. All right, there we have it. All fabricated, welded up, ground down. Got a nice transition there. Nice transition there. You know, you don't have to grind it down fucking perfect because you're going to put body filler over this to smooth everything out. But everything's flush, smooth. It's got a couple ripples, nothing horrible. I do have this one spot that I had to repair, and I pulled it out a little bit, but you know, I would get some Michelangelo shit going on with the Bondo, cover that up, but I don't think it'll be too thick. Probably be at the maximum, but I think it'll be all right. But yeah, now if you look for the comparison, here's what it looks like with the wheel on it. And on the back, shooting right down the side, nice and tucked compared to this side. See how it's sticking out a bit? So yeah, let's do this side now. All right, well, I got the wheel well cleaned up and marked out, so I'll show you that. You got to use a wire wheel. Well, at least I used a wire wheel to clean out the old rubber undercoating, and then but I couldn't, the paint that would come off with that, I used a grinding disc for the areas that I'm going to be cutting and then eventually welding. So show you here, I ground down here, underneath, same here, and then I'll be marking lines here in a little bit. But right now I'm going to be working on the wheel tub, getting that cut out. The driver's side's a little different than the passenger side. On the passenger side, this overlap here that's spot welded only comes up to about here, and so there's only a couple spot welds. You got some spot welds here to cut, and then up here on the passenger side. But on the driver's side, it comes all the way up here. So before, on the passenger side, my cut line with the saw would start like down here, and then I worked my way up, you know, and try to keep them straight, because you got to make filler panels, filler pieces to go in there. So I tried to make them as straight in as I can, but luckily here I only had to go to this corner here, and then I'll cut these spot welds, and then here's my line the way I figured it. Well, and then I'll show you over to the other side. I don't know if you can see it. Yep, there it is. Don't worry about that top line. I'm going to be using this line here, and then there's a joint that comes down as straight as I can to there. Here I'll have a couple more spot welds here to cut, and then my cut line going up with the death wheel. And how I figured that is, I take what I did, let me do with my little block. I'm coming out 1.5 inches, and I figured a block about this thick, which is, let's see here, this block is about 1/2 inch thick this way, and then plus the thickness of my straight edge. I set the block on the fender like that, and then use my straight edge or my ruler, make sure it's sitting flat as you can on the lip, and then run the ruler up as a plane, and then I made a mark. And then I put my T-handle together and butted it up against the bottom of the fender here and set it, and then I transferred it to the inside. So, because this is going to be approximately the height of the flare. It might end up a little bit higher. I left a little room for trimming when I get the filler piece in here. So, I mean, you kind of got to go with it and eyeball it, you know, and just kind of figure it out. So, that's how I did it. If you decide to do something like this, you know, I'm sure you guys will be able to figure something out. This is how I did it. All right, time to start cutting. Punch, spring actuated, and a spot weld color. I think it's loose. All right. Well, that wasn't easy, but I'll show you what. All right, got those spot welds cut. It should be loose now. I got my cut there. Those spot welds down there. Got my cut there. Now it's time to cut the outside. All right, here we go. I got a piece of 3-inch tape marking my cut line, my vertical cut line here. So I'll be cutting along this line here. I've got a black line, maybe slightly less than a 1/4 inch above this body line. I'm gonna be cutting there. And then once I get around in this area, I'll stop. And then I'll do a radius. And I'll follow this line, this top of the black, solid black line, right around. That's the radius of the flare. Cutting it there. I'll do a radius here, down to this black line, which is again about a 1/4, 1/8 inch above this body line, to this 3/8 or 3-inch tape. Cut along there. And then about an 1/8 inch back behind here underneath I'll be cutting. And then after that, this whole thing should pop right out. Same thing on that side underneath. There was a buttload of seam sealer at the bottom of the quarter there. Make sure you dig as much of that out as you can before you weld. Otherwise it just makes a mess. All right, there. That's done. What a pain in the butt. But I got it. I missed a couple spot welds, but I found them, and let's see. All right. There, I got all cut all the way around. I used a body saw myself to cut the radius there. Had it cut there. Everything's loose. Everything's loose here. So the next thing I need to do is, the way I did the first side, the other side is I used that planing method with the block and the straight edge, and I made a bunch of dashes and kept the plane all the way around. But for this side, I'm going to use the cutoff so I can try to make them as symmetrical as possible. So I'll be doing that next, but I think I might do that real quick. I don't know. Maybe I'll do that real quick, but after that, I'm done for the day. But it's all loose. You got to cut it up higher, for one, for the plane, for two, for the inner tub to come out past the body. So that's all cut out. Here's the two. I missed those two spot welds there. I'll have a little bit of fixing and rust repair to do there. A little bit of rust repair to do here. Here's this side. All the spot welds cut out. And there's that line. So, yeah. Not easy, but it can be done. Like I said, I've never done this before, you know. So, just give it a little thought, a little bit of know-how, and put your mind to it, and just do it. So, we're going to get back to this in a couple days. I'm beat, and I got things to do around the house. So, all right, let's get back to it later. All right, here we go. I got a couple different pieces cut up, and this is starting patching it back together. Oh, it's hot. It's still like 85 degrees and it's 7 o'clock at night. These are little magnets you can get, you know, little hook magnets you can get at your hardware store. Indispensable for this. All right, there we go. I got those 3 pieces pretty well tacked in, partially welded. So I'll show you that to you real quick. So here's one piece. I reused the spot weld holes that I drilled out initially to separate this, and then there's a plate that goes from here all the way to here. It's cut at an angle, comes down here at the bottom, and that ties this to this, actually the inside of the inner rocker panel. And then after this, I'll be filling in these gaps. I'm using this block here as a spacer. It's about a 1 inch 7/8 inch wide block, and that's what's giving me my flare distance. So all the way around, and then over on this side, here's this plate here. I got it butt welded here. It's lapped over this place where the inner trunk floor extension is. It was kind of rotted out, so I'm only putting a couple in there because eventually I'm gonna have to replace that when I get around to taking the body off the frame. But I can't really replace that lower trunk extension without taking the body off. I probably should have done it when I replaced this frame and had this frame out of it. So if you're doing that, if you're replacing this rear frame section, take a good look at your trunk extension, because that would be a good time to change it when this is out. Otherwise you got to do the body. And so I got a tack welded here. I got a spacer right here that I'm gonna weld along here, and then reusing the original tacks or spot weld holes that I initially cut out. And then I got it there, and then there's the gap that I'll be filling around inside. And then after I do all that, then the inner tub is done. But this is the hard part. The rest is fairly easy, just templates and cutting, and then everything's butt welded. Well, there we go. Next part of this video, I'll be starting to do the fill-ins here. Got fill-in underneath using here. You probably can't see it now, but I had a block. Must have fell out, but I'm having a block this direction. Hopefully it still fits. Oh, it tightened up on me a little bit, but I don't know. I think it'll be all right. But yeah, that's about a 1/2 inch gap. I don't know. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, that's about a 1/2 inch down to nothing. This side is about 1 inch. But they're 1 inch down to nothing. And well, once I tack the side up, yeah, then it'll be 1 inch down to nothing. And then a little filler piece there. All right, so the rest, the next part of the video will be showing some of that, but I'm pretty sure you guys get the gist of it. So stay tuned. I'm tired. The rest will probably be this weekend. All right, there we go. Got a bunch of my pieces, made a bunch of templates that I about 4 of them right here. This is all but one. Once I get, and then I cut them out. Here's a couple of my pieces here. This is, now I'm gonna, I'll figure out which side's what. I'll prime them, the back side with weld through primer. Stick them in there, tack them up. Then I'll make a template for my last piece, and then we'll be starting on the outside actual flare and get the pretty stuff done. So all right, that was a pretty good deal. I'm gonna finish this up, and then we'll pick it up again tomorrow. Will be done. All right, here we go. I've got the templates for the flare mocked up from the other side. I had to do a little trimming, and then I just connected both of them right here, and then I'm gonna cut this in half so it's equal. I had a little bit of a gap in between there, and then I got some radiuses drawn in there for the radius of the flare there. I'll nip those. I left them a little bit long here because I'm going to bend this sliver right here to close this end, so that way this piece will pretty much be square. Same thing on this side, leaving a little long. May have to add a little bit to my template. I have to remember to add, I'll probably write that down on there right now, add maybe a 1/4 inch to the tip. But then here I've got, in a couple spots, it's hanging over the body. That's what I want. This spot here, it's gonna land right about right. I may try to remember to do this a little bit long in this area here when I mark out my template on the steel, and then right here. So then when I come along, I'm gonna try to concentrate on stitching this nice and straight first, and then I'll come back on the top, and where it's good, I'll tack it into place, and then I'll use my cutoff wheel at an angle to trim right there so it's flush, so the piece will sit in there flush, and then I'll tack it as I go. So that's where we're at right now. Alright, I got one piece tacked up on the ledge. Now I'm gonna cut it so it'll sit flush with the vertical fender. Alright, there we go. That's pretty much stacked into place. Got a little bit on the corner over there on the massage, but you get the gist. Alright, there we have it. One set of custom fender flares, all welded up. Just got to grind it down smooth, do the body work, and paint it. After I grind it down, all I'm doing is throwing some primer on it for now, so I can at least get it on the road a couple times this year, and then I'll do the body work over the winter. But this is it. This is the finished product. What I got going on there, that's that. That's done. This spot I needed to have a filler, but on this spot the gap was small enough for me to fill it. And then under here, wheel tubs are all welded up. Go over there, and so you remember this is what it'll look like when it's all done, all ground down smooth. All right, so there you have it. Like I said, I'm not a professional. This video, if you're gonna do this yourself, don't just go off of what I did. Go to YouTube school and watch a bunch of these different metal workers, especially the professionals. I am not a professional, but I don't think it turned out half bad. I mean, could have been better, but body filler will clean it up nicely. So yeah, it can be done. So until next time.